and welcome back to another episode of the MDCP podcast. Nearly dropped into a Fit Affiliate podcast, but picked myself up. It's all good. Joined by the rest of the A team, Ash and Sam. How you going, guys?
Doing wonderful, thanks.
Great.
Love it when we get the three amigos together. Great things happen. So last episode we talked about positioning and how to, position yourself as an expert in the marketplace, get your voice heard. So I thought a really logical segue to that was on packaging and how do you, create or put yourself into places that people want to see and it makes sense to people.
Mm-hmm.
So who wants to kick us off on this one? This is a fun one.
This is a fun one.
Ash looks like she's ready.
Jump right in.
Good, go.
And say first things first. Why? Why are you packaging? Right? Just like we said, why are you positioning? Remember your why, where it all started. Don't get consumed with the hows off the bat. Ask yourself why you're doing it. And then you can start asking the other questions. Who are you trying to reach? What do you have in this market that other people don't? What separates you goes back to your niche, right? Yep. All the same rules kind of apply here as well.
Yep.
So start with that, and Sam, go ahead and
not at the bit. I think that's a great place to start. And asked another way, like, what happens if you don't package correctly? Like, what does not packaging correctly look like, right? And so I think it would, to start with, look like someone who is not coherent in terms of their why. Like someone who hasn't sat down and asked themselves, why the hell am I doing this? You're gonna be able to tell if you're consuming, like I'm scrolling through Instagram, I'm scrolling through TikTok, I'm scrolling through insert social media platform here. You can tell when an individual is kind of scattered, right? Like the best accounts are the accounts that do one thing really, really, really well. If you're
guilty many times, by the way,
I'm guilty too.
Yeah.
And it's
shiny
object syndrome. It's SOS, baby. Like that kind of shiny object thing. And especially, I'm going to leave aside like the human component and the self-limiting belief and the, afraid of calling myself an entrepreneur and things like that. Like the best accounts are the ones that do things really, really well. And like, that's how you know that, like, for example, maybe some accounts that we traditionally love, they can go through this ebb and flow of like being on message and then not being on message. And when they're not on message, it and you look at it and you're like, why the fuck are they talking about this? Or like, maybe it's not even that bad. Maybe it's just like, okay, I guess maybe, all right, move on, and you don't really engage with it, right? That brand's credibility takes a hit. Whereas content that is dialed in with a why, Greg Glassman is a great example. Not that Greg Glassman was a hell of a content creator, but Greg Glassman had an unshakable, crystal clear, diamond hard why. He was going to change the world and he was going to solve the world's most vexing problem. He was going to kick Coca-Cola's ass while he did it, And every time he got up and talked, it was the same thing, on brand, like clockwork, right? And he had, and so like early on, you either identified with that mission or you did not. And he and the media that was created around CrossFit reflected that. And when Greg departed, like, I think we can all agree the media around CrossFit, first of all, they had no media team anymore. Like they had to like, reorganize that shit. And then when they came back, it's like, okay, well, what now? There was a little bit of a, finding our footing and finding our identity, because the identity of the brand was no longer wrapped up in the mission of its founder.
Mm.
You know?
Mm.
And so go ahead.
It was kind of left to the ecosystem to create the content then, but then they were like, what are we creating? Because everyone was used to having at least some sort of North Star.
Yeah.
And then they were basically resharing from the ecosystem, which is the shiny objects, because everyone has a different hill that they want to die on that particular, whatever they're posting about. Everyone had a different agenda. So they weren't really sticking to a why or a being on brand.
Yeah. And I think that, it's not a bad thing to go to the ecosystem for content.
Mm.
But I think the further you get away from the pinnacle in terms of, like with CrossFit, it was really simple. There was one guy at the top of the heap, and he said, and what he said went,
Mm.
When you dilute that, you introduce, it's the more cooks in the kitchen syndrome, right?
Mm.
You're going to get each person's individual bias and flavor and slant and all of that stuff. And so it's not a bad idea to go to the community. I think going to the community tells you, what is the message you've created and how has it been interpreted? And I think it's very interesting to see what came out of the community around that time. But to kind of bring this back around to, what we were doing here, CrossFit circa 2012 to 2018, 19 was packaged a very specific way. And really 2012 to 2017, it was packaged a very specific way. Then there started being a shift in things 2017 to 2019/2020. And there was a huge monumental shift. And that organization since has been realigning itself back in core values. And I think if you disagree with that, I would say I can prove you wrong, because there was after the new ownership, there was a shift where they stopped calling it CFHQ and they started calling it CrossFit Home Office.
Ugh.
And there's a lot of touchy-feely, a lot of emotion, a lot of reactions around that. But then even in the CrossFit training department Instagram, there was this great series of posts where they brought a bunch of red shirts, a bunch of flow masters, they flew them out to Boulder, and they grabbed all of the people who were in charge and they put them through a level 1. And they said, you don't get to work here if you haven't been indoctrinated in what we're doing. And some of the hashtags were, it's not home, hashtag not home office, hashtag CFHQ. And so brands need to realign. And part of that is an example of understanding a why, and that informs how everything is packaged, right? So big picture understanding.
I think too, it's important to reflect that, while we're talking about CrossFit as the corporation and, Joe Coach sitting over in the corner going, yeah, but I'm not a big corporate entity. Why do I need to be on brand, and how does that relate to me? I think that's something worthwhile that we can probably touch on, because it can seem overwhelming to go, or to consider yourself, if you're in the space and you want to influence people to work with you, which is essentially, what you're doing. If you're coaching, you want people to trust you and work with you. You do have a brand.
Yeah.
And, if you can switch from thinking that just applies to big corporations, the big machine, versus you are Sam, if you were posting content about, here's the plan that I prescribe for my clients and and then, your next reel was you hanging out and, just something vaping in a corner, for want of a better thing. It's like, okay, well, we're confused now because Sam says do this, but then he's over here doing this.
Right.
Understanding how everything links to
hashtag sponsored by Juul.
Yeah.
Well, I think, again, not to sound like a broken record, but it goes back to why. If you made the decision to coach, you said, above all else, I need to coach people. I need to share this message. I need to get it out there. But was your reason why the exact same reason that CrossFit HQ started CrossFit? Or like, what is your why that like changed your life that made you go, oh, I want to help others have that moment as well? So it's kind of, even, you know, staying in the CrossFit space, because that's kind of what we do. Even if you are wanting to coach in a CrossFit method, a methodology, that doesn't mean that your why is the same as, it's probably not the same as Greg Glassman's why, right? So it's then utilizing CrossFit as a tool, because again, that's a what, and communicating your why through your teachings to others. So that's where the importance of kind of creating an identity as a coach to promote, to package yourself a certain way. Like, how do you want to be perceived?
Yeah. And I think that you do a great job of highlighting, like, all of that starts with why are you doing what you're doing? Because I know plenty of coaches. I mean, we're making a presumption. We talk about this. I know a lot of coaches who are not interested in being career professional coaches, you know?
Right.
And now we get into, you know, if Tony were here, he would be like, okay, well, there's a difference between coach and trainer. And there absolutely is. And that's, for the sake of simplicity, that is outside the scope of this discussion right now, right? But if you are the kind of person who had a life-changing experience and you're like, I want to do that for other people, and you're here to coach, then you do have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Like, where did that come from? That's an integral part of establishing who you are as an individual. It's the same reason why some people choose to, it's the same question that should be asked in reference to why some people choose to start an affiliate. Like, you do not need to, and maybe should not, adopt CrossFit's why in terms of talking about the reason that your affiliate should exist. Like, you should, and if you own, if affiliate owners, if you're a head coach and an affiliate owner, like, you should be able to answer the question, why does your affiliate need to exist? And if you can't come up with something, or if you're quoting Greg Glassman's 100 Words of Fitness, like not saying that's not a really great answer, but like, also there are 4,999 other affiliates in America. What makes yours different? And you can't say community. Or coaching.
We do talk about that a lot on the Fit Affiliate podcast, as in, you know, what, and that's one of the key things that we ask clients, you know, when they come into Fit Affiliate or even reach out, is like, why does your affiliate need to exist? What makes it special? Because if everyone just blindly adopts the why, that's where we get into the why of CrossFit. That's why we get into the, you know, whole topic of, you know, commoditization and standardization, which we, you know, you need to be unique and celebrate your uniqueness, and not just be a cookie cutter of what you think the best thing is, because you're going to wake up at some point and go, well, shit, this sucks, because this is not the affiliate that I wanted to run. This is not what I wanted to do with my life. Because it's someone else's affiliate, because you've followed all the, you know, gurus handing out, do it this way, do it that way. And suddenly, and then you started it following CrossFit's why, and you're like, man, I just wanted this place so I could, you know, help people. It's like, well, that's where you started to get lost, because you took on everyone else's and not your own.
And I'm guilty of this as well. Like, in developing as a professional coach in my early coaching years, I took on a position or a persona that was rooted in and relative to the other coaches who I was exposed to at the time. I took on pieces of this coach, and I took on pieces of another coach. And it took me a long time to get comfortable with just being me, and to realize that in taking, you know, and I'm not saying that taking pieces of like certain personalities is a bad thing. Like, we do it naturally. It's what your children do. It's what, you know, it's how we learn things and how we build and grow. Like, but when I started realizing that the things I was stealing, in the unique combinations I was stealing and presenting them, became something that was uniquely me, then it forced me to start to think about like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this now? You know, and that's where we get to like packaging as an actionable item. Yeah.
And, you know, I talk to clients when I work on their mindset, and we talk about having an aspirational identity. And it's look for, if you want to be successful in a particular area, you look at somebody, and that whole people like us do things like this.
Yes.
So, you know, I look to coaches that I admire and respect to go, okay, well, what makes them so good? What are they doing every day? Well, they're writing, they have a morning ritual, they do, you know, they have reflection time, or they, you know, whatever it is that they happen to do. And I go, okay, well, instead of taking a carbon copy of what they do, it's like, okay, what does my morning ritual looks like? It doesn't have to be the same as theirs. It can just be that I do this thing and that I understand the intent behind it, but I've made it mine.
Yeah.
So aspirational identity and wanting to be like the coaches you admire and you respect does not mean you're, you know, taking a carbon copy of them. It means what are their habits and behaviors? People like us do things like this that they're doing that make them successful, that I can implement in my way that fits me. And I think that's an important distinction.
It is an important distinction. It also, so like we can take those things, and this is where things get really interesting, and we can start to like pull the individual into this discussion. Like how I do that, how I interpret that information. So this, you know, Andrew Huberman, right? Andrew Huberman talks about getting morning sunlight. Okay, cool. I do that thing. I have my own experience in doing that, right? And I have an insight to me. My insight might be useful to someone who is in my circle who might not have heard of Andrew Huberman, right? They're like, who the hell is this dude, you know? And so I talk about my experience doing this thing, right? And I talk about my insight. That seems really straightforward. Hey guys, I got up for 30 days every single day and stood outside and stared at the sun for, 5 minutes every single day. And here's what I felt. And blah, blah, blah. Piece of content right there, right? Well, what is happening there is the stepwise approach to packaging, right? And you can break it down into individual bits, but umbrella style, like big picture, kind of, we talked about positioning. You have to be positioned as leading edge, as someone who is, trustworthy in all these things. Well, when you package correctly, you realize your primary purpose is delivering information that is easily executed and understood, right? And when we say understood, we mean like by an 8-year-old. So not by my, came from MIT wife type of deal. So I'm going to talk about Andrew Huberman, right? Is my research. I read, I consumed, I have insight, provide, and make it actionable to people, right? I've now packaged a single piece of information or content and distributed it.
And that's what we talked about last week, going, we're doing the learning for our clients so that we can give it to them in Cliff Notes version or a way that, someone, you could share Andrew Huberman stuff and they could go, whoa, so far over my head. We could Samify it or Asherify it or Lisaify it, and people go, yeah, I'm down with that. That makes complete sense to me because we've, put it into different language that resonates. There are people who will, like you said, geek out on terms that, say, for example, your wife would put into things from, her academic experience, and the rest of us, our eyes would glaze over.
Yes.
But then, Ash will say the same thing to me. I go, oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Cool, Ash, you're awesome. You're amazing. And it's like, it's really us doing that learning for the clients, which is part of our positioning. And then we package it up in a way that digestible.
Yeah.
I mean, Gordon Ramsay's not, preparing every piece of your meal individually. He's he's preparing the meal for you and giving it to you in a package that you can easily consume.
Yes.
Well, here's everything on your plate. You don't need to know all the stuff that went into it and the temperatures and the
steps. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're like knowledge chefs. Look at that. Dropping that one today.
Yeah.
Hashtag knowledge chefs.
Knowledge. I like that.
I like that.
Yeah.
Also, real quick, there's a series on YouTube where Gordon Ramsay cooks meals live on camera in like 10 minutes or less.
Yeah.
It's
insane.
It's awesome. Like, I watched him cook a steak and eggs on a cast iron pan outdoors over a barbecue. And all I wanted to do for the rest of the day was drink cowboy coffee, wear a hat, and put like a piece of straw in my teeth. It's beautiful.
That's packaging.
That's packaging. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I could do that in my backyard and you'd be like, what are you doing? But, you trust, he has positioned himself as an expert. He's packaged it well and you go, cool. I'm like, let's start fires in the backyard, Katie. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think that, when we talk about this idea of packaging and, take away the overwhelmingness of it, if that's a word, is it doesn't have to be high production, high value.
No.
Anything, you don't have to put something out. And I know we just spoke on an earlier call about, get something out there and, put it out there. Like imperfect action trumps, perfect inaction every single time.
Yes.
And you don't need to have the video with the transitions and the fancy, like if you've got a smartphone, you can put something up in 30 seconds. The amount of times I've had a great idea for a topic and I've just hit record and started talking and then just shared it.
Yeah.
Don't need filters and music and whatever.
Yeah.
You don't know how to do that? You don't need to.
Yeah.
Just be authentic and create something.
Yeah. Well, and so quick shout out to Craig Howard, owner of CrossFit Diablo. He had someone on his Instagram recently who was like, the reason these phones cost $1,000 is not because it makes them a better phone. It's because of the cameras that are inside of these phones. I don't need to go out and purchase a $1,000, $3,000, $5,000 piece of AV gear when I've got this device. So going back to imperfect action beating perfect inaction, yes, just start doing something. But I also love your line about, well, it's not to make the perfect video or anything like that. You're right. The focus. And so, kind of bring back to what the heck are we trying to do here? You figure out your why, what's driving it, right? You figure out, you're working on your positioning. You're talking about like important things or things that are important to your group of people. You're positioning yourself relative to other people. When you provide information, the simplest way you can think of it is be a content creator, right? It's probably the, leveraging the internet where, 100 years ago, the only leverage I could have was the people who at best subscribed to the same newspaper I did. And I could take out newspaper advertising, for a penny every month or whatever the heck it went for, right? And if someone didn't read the newspaper and I didn't pay a little boy to go cry about it on the corner, they didn't hear about me. It's not the case nowadays. We have literally almost every human being in the world connected via the internet, so you can leverage that stuff, right? So when I create a piece of content, I can be deliberate about that piece of content. And my intention, or rather my goal, should be for that thing that I create to be shareable and actionable, right? So going back to Andrew Huberman, I can repost an Andrew Huberman video, but while I love geeking out and listening to Andrew Huberman talk about fucking shit that's going on inside of the brain, not all of my friends want to listen to that. So I can boil it down and be like, hey, I did this thing. Exactly. So like going back to, and here's a great free example. Going back to that thing about getting out in the morning. He does a great breakdown on why it's very important to get outside early in the morning and look at what's called low angle sunlight, right? Both in the morning and in the evening. But I don't have to talk about all of the stuff that's at play. It's like, hey, if you find yourself waking up groggy or trying to stay up late, try this for 5 days. Wake up, first thing, go downstairs, look in the direction of the sun. And in the evening, before you tuck yourself in for dinner, stand outside, look in the direction of the setting sun. It will help reset your circadian rhythm. Do it for 5 days. Tag me in the comments. Let me know how it works. Boom. Free piece of content right there, right? I don't have to talk about like, what's going on in my basal ganglia or any shit like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, because I know the podcast you're referring to, I listened. I love Andrew Huberman. I'm pretty sure he talked about just that one topic for like 45 or 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Before he talked about the rest of, and that's it. It's information that we may geek out on. And again, that's what coaches do, right? Like, that's why we get hired, is because we compress time for people. So guess what? You don't have to listen to this hour-long lecture that you may not understand 90% of it. And then you might have gone, that's a waste of time. And you don't even try to look at the sun for 5 minutes a day.
Yes.
But
because you're overwhelmed.
Sam put it in a very easy way to absorb. And you're going, this is a little tip that's going to take me 5 minutes. I'll at least give it a try a couple days.
Right.
Yeah. And we talk about packaging, and that is address pain, fix a problem. So, for Sam just then said, do you wake up of a morning feeling groggy? 99.9% of the population would probably go, actually, yeah. And right on cue.
Yeah.
And, you go, oh, yeah, that Sam guy said the thing about the sun. I'm going to go out and do that. Like, even if they half-ass it, they'll figure it out. Even if they only got the morning sun, didn't do the evening.
Just make sure you don't stare directly at the sun.
No, don't stare. Yeah,
very, very clearly low-angle sunlight.
Low angle, not direct. But, as coach, and, we talked a bit, we primarily direct our conversations towards coaches in the CrossFit space. It's, you go to your level 1, you learn all the things. When you come back, you should try not to word vomit on everybody about, well, I know why you can't squat to death, because your femur length is out of proportion to your tibia, and you just say, can you get your hips lower? Like, that's what we're doing. We've got all this. We don't talk about, when we program a workout, oxidative and glycogen and, all these sort of pathways. We go, we want this workout to be short and fast, and you're going to breathe heavy. Or this is going to be a longer effort. It's going to be endurance. All the sciencey stuff helps us create the prescription. Yeah. But we don't need to, and then we can just give that to you, because that's all people want, is solve my problem for me. Yeah. Cool. I want to get fitter. Here's your prescription. Yeah.
And that is so important and cannot be overlooked. Like, so going back to my own example, which, as I'm listening to you talk, was an even better example than I was imagining. So yay me. So talk about a problem, right? What is a problem that your clientele or your audience is facing? Do you wake up groggy? Insert everybody's name here. Talk about solution, right? In a way that is short and actionable. Sound familiar, CrossFit coaches, right? So short and actionable. You can make it by making it short, you make it easy to consume. By making it actionable, you increase the value. Because if I just talk in the abstract about it, and like a minute and a half in, someone's like, well, I don't understand what the fuck I'm talking about here, then I don't actually affect any change. The more change you affect, the more valuable the piece of information is. Make the thing actionable. It's the same reason we say knees out instead of giving them a dissertation, like you said, right? And then finally, if you make it short and if it is actionable, the likelihood that it will be shared is much greater, right? So I'm going to steal this. I'm blatantly going to steal this idea, and I'm going to talk about it on a post the moment we get off of this podcast. And it'll be interesting to kind of to run. I wish I could do like an A/B test. Like how many, like one long form, how many people sit through 90 fucking seconds of me talking about, brain hormones and shit. And the other one, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, maybe being like, hey, do not sleep, blah, 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 blah. Tag me if it works for you.
Humans, the one, like, social media has given us the gift of, like you said, and the internet connecting us, you know, globally.
Yeah.
But it's also given us the attention span of a gnat. So we literally, like, I will regularly, as I'm scrolling through and I go, oh, this video looks, it's 5 minutes. Whatever. And keep scrolling. Like if it, okay, yeah, 30 seconds. Or even better, does it have subtitles? Great. I don't even need to put the sound on because we don't like to listen to things now. And, you know, we're scrolling through. It's like something that grabs my attention is something that looks a little different, but it's okay. Oh, this is 30 minutes. I don't have 30 minutes right now. This is my, you know, wasting time period. I don't have 30 minutes to waste. I've got a minute. So, you know, but if it's something I want to find out more on from that minute, cool, I'll go dig around. But it's, you know, we have the shortest attention spans now than we've ever had in history because it's just, you know, swipe up, finish watching that reel, or it's no interest to me, swipe up, swipe up, swipe up. Like, I do it terribly. Like if I'm watching TikTok, it's like, no, that wasn't funny. Swipe, swipe, swipe. Oh, that's funny. I'll watch that one. It's just the thing.
And, you know, just as to all the people out there who are not maybe on those platforms of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, I feel you because I'm just coming back.
I was just about to say Ash is feeling triggered right now.
I'm just going, but just to be like, well, then how do I package, you know, how do I practice packaging? You do it in your classes, right? If you're a coach and you are running classes, that's the thing that's really cool and unique about every coach as well. You don't go on a dissertation, but like if your audience and if your niche is
CrossFit.
Is competing in CrossFit, right? How can you help your members in classes? You're going to give them efficiency tips. Now, do we do that in general? Yes, but maybe you have more than other people, or you have a different way of communicating them, or you can give a few extra because you're so efficient at giving efficiency tips for workouts, right? If you are somebody who is more prone to being concerned about mobility and recovery, you can take 90 seconds in a class to demonstrate and give people stretches at the end of class, or even some active release before they're going to do a lift that might help their lift, right? Like that alone is just in a CrossFit class, what you can do with two different niches that were just off the top of my head. That's, and, you know, you can do it and you don't need that's a platform. Your class is a platform.
Yes.
And, you know, just to tag onto that, Ash, as well, is like, if you're overwhelmed with, you know, if you're someone like, for example, that you're not, you know, deep in social media, pick one platform. You do not have to appear on every single platform because your audience, once you discover your why and your niche and who are you talking to, you'll figure out where your audience lives. Now, if you're after, 50-year-old women who want to increase bone density, they're probably not hanging out on TikTok. Just saying. But, you know, Facebook might be where they're at. Like, again, we keep coming back. Once you've got your why and your niche, that basically helps you narrow down where you need to be. Like, you know, your average mum and 3 kids is not hanging out on Twitter.
Right.
You know, people who like to geek out in the space like me and Sam, we're on Twitter. If you want to talk to us, that's where we are. But that's not necessarily where your audience is going to be, depending on who you want to help. So don't think that you have to be all the things to all the people and have, you know, 1 million social media handles. And if you do, you can employ them as needed. So, for example, if you are targeting, you know, a certain demographic, you go, well, I know they hang out on Pinterest, so I'm going to just go and post this over here because I think that'll be a great image over there. Great, go do that. But you don't have to have the thing that, you know, goes everywhere because your audience is not everywhere. And by your audience, it's the people who I'm interested in helping, and you can't and don't want everyone. So where do they live? Where are they most active? And you get to that by figuring out, well, who are they? And then why do I want to serve them? And what are their problems? What are their pains? And talk to that. Pick one. Don't overcomplicate it.
Ash, I love that example of being in a CrossFit class. And as I've gotten notes here about like packaging information and stepwise process and things like that. And it's literally, when I wrote this down, I had not thought of coaching CrossFit, and I don't know why. And I feel stupid now, but like, it's, here are the steps. Be clear about what your client wants. Create a step-by-step application and process. The better this is done, the more value you add. Hey, everybody, I'm going to teach you how to squat better. Here's how we do it. Feet shoulder width apart, right? Hips initiate back and down. Keep a neutral spine. Knees track over the toes. Hips descend below the knees. Good. Everybody stand. The better I am at applying those 5 steps, the more valuable I am as a coach. It's exactly the same thing, right? And so now and it's not to say that the squat isn't more complicated. Of course, the squat's more complicated, but they don't need to know that, and they don't want to know that. You have boiled it down to 5 things that are going to make them better at squatting. You're valuable as a coach. Boom. Repeat that process consistently across a platform, whether that's the room you stand in front of, or whether you choose to put yourself on a platform like Instagram, right? Whatever it is, you've got to be doing this consistently, right? Because if you establish yourself consistently, and not just in this particular thing, but in all things. So like say I'm going to put myself on Instagram. I want the person who I am on Instagram to be consistent over and over and over again across my post, right? And I can I don't have to be just one thing. I can be a couple things. I can wear a couple different hats, but I can do that. I can have that jive with who I am in person when I coach, when I, lecture, when someone asks me a question with my private clients. I can have those personas jive, right? So it's that consistency will breed results in a bunch of different places in your life. And that is absolutely part of this equation of packaging.
So I guess as we come to the end of, sticking a pin in this episode, and I like how we ended last episode going, give me something that right now I can finish watching this, listening to this. I'm going to go and do these things, and I'm going to start today. So let's put out that, because our goal is to give value and create, action that people can take to improve, their position as coaches, because we deeply care about coaches in the landscape.
Yes.
So finish listening. What's the first thing I'm going to go do? What do I need to do?
Ash?
Create some sort of content with intention. Simple. 90 seconds or less.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be on social media. It can be what you're going to apply in your class tomorrow, but create something.
Yeah. Just start, And I love the intention notion as well. It goes back to a why, which you highlighted right at the beginning of the episode. And I think we need to harp on again. And like, you have your why, you start. And if we're going to talk about pieces of content or standing at the front of the desk or the front of the whiteboard, the 3 big things that stand out to me: whatever you say must be easily understood, right? It must be designed to be shareable, right? And it must be driven by actionability. So if it's high level and esoteric, could be great information, but the value that we derive from something like this is directly proportional to how actionable we make it in the shortest amount of time.
Perfect. Go do something, go create something. And if you need to sit and reflect on your why and go, okay, why am I doing this? Who do I want to talk to? Because hopefully from listening to other episodes, you've worked through your niche. Is like, what hurts them? Where are their boo-boos? Like what's their pain? Like find, and talk on just one thing.
Yeah.
And go do it. And if you're not comfortable with video, cool. Do a written post.
Yeah.
Canva is your best friend for creating, images. It's like there are free resources. And then practice with video. One of my big things is I never used to like video. I hated it. And then I just started posting into my members page at the gym until I got good at it there. Then I started doing live, so I couldn't edit it or filter it. And then suddenly you can just do it now.
Yeah.
You just have to find a way to create it and put it out there to the world.
Yeah.
And one thing I think I want to leave people with is, because we talked about not overcomplicating it, not overthinking it, but one of the greatest things that a friend said to me once is, like, once you put something out there, what happens to it is none of your business now. So don't worry about how people are going to perceive it. Like, clearly you're not going to be a douche or be offensive, but once it's out there, you can't control how people are going to receive that.
Yeah.
Or whether they find it valuable or not. But if you found it valuable enough to post, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because someone who needs to hear it will hear it if you keep doing it consistently. But don't overthink about, well, I need to get, 50,000 likes and 3 shares and like, no. Just don't even think about it. Once you've put it out there, that's up to, the forces of the social media universe that will
The
determine what
algorithm
happens
gods.
to it. Yeah, and that's none of your business.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's none of your business.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, right? You can get really hung up on that stuff, but yeah.
Yup.
All right, team, and I'm excited to give a precursor that next week, very special guest coming on, actually our first official guest.
It is,
we won't
isn't it?
count
Yeah.
Tony as a guest, but it's our first official guest.
That's so sad.
The one and only Pat Barber. Ash
Mhm.
is triggered and sad. She won't be with us, but we have promised he will be back again. But Sam and I will be talking to the one and only Mr. Pat Barber. So keep an eye out for that episode. Make sure you like and subscribe. Share our content with a coach who likes it, and you can also, or needs it, and follow us on the Instagram at MDCP podcast.
Yeah,
I believe that's what we are.
$1 Million Coach Podcast.
That's it. Yeah, thank you, Sam. I just went completely blank. Good.
That's okay.
Get it right. But yeah, follow along. We're on the YouTubes. We're on everything. And get creating and tag us.
Yeah,
if you
please.
got something, tag it. We would love to see it.
And one more thing, if you go down this rabbit hole and you talk about a why, and you get like 3 steps in and you're like, fuck, I don't know what to do, please, under our names or our handles, like reach out to us, reach out to $1 Million Coach Podcast. This is not a sales pitch. We're just trying to help people. Like hit me up, and I would love to just ask you questions that will piss you off, but I promise we'll get you to the answer. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I'll see you on the next one.
Amen.
Right. Thank